Well, to some extent, one of the issues with dialogue is that it's quite an expensive process, so it has to be funded. And frankly, I don't think you're going to get the higher educational institutions interested unless it's funded, because there are huge pressures on funds in universities like Imperial College, for example, and Imperial College is rather well off financially compared with most. So I think a key thing must be funding. But there does seem to be a sea change in attitude towards public engagement generally in the university sector as a whole. More and more higher educational institutions are recognizing that they need to present their science in a way which is much more intelligible, which is much more friendly to the public who are eventually going to be affected and are going to use the science. And there is a growing awareness of the need for citizenship amongst the scientific community within the universities. It's not always there. And it's interesting, for example, that sometimes you get quite aberrant responses. In a way, what we saw in the Royal Society last week, I think, was an example of actually a failure to recognize the citizenship of the scientists. That's a very interesting issue. But I don't think that that actually follows the general trend. I think the general trend now is much more that we need to listen to what people are saying to us. There needs to be a degree of humility about what we do. There has to be a recognition that actually the science we do is not our science, but it actually belongs to the public who pay for it through taxation. There has to be a recognition that the science we do may produce technology which is frankly quite dangerous. And therefore, there has to be a degree of understanding of the risks that are involved on the part of the public and whether or not they accept those risks. And if they do accept their risks, whether they can control it. And if they can control it, can they allow government to control it? Now, that's particularly important. I think it's going to be of growing importance in our society, where we have massively powerful technologies, like weapons technology, for example. And I think there are issues there where there has to be a much greater connection between the interested parties, which are the public, government, the scientists who are doing the work, the stakeholders, and so on, policymakers. I think the reason for dialogue, essentially, between scientists and citizens is because scientists are citizens, and they have to see themselves as citizens. And one of the problems is that sometimes we're inclined to forget that.